The St. Louis Blues are doing the unthinkable by winning their 11th game in a row, putting the NHL on notice with key players stepping up and Jim Montgomery showing the league that he is the best coach in the NHL. We have so much to do a breakdown in this episode on the St. Louis Blues run. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying the St. Louis Blues content or NHL content, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. 90% of you guys watching this are not subscribed. And if you want to stay up to date on the NHL or your St. Louis Blues, go down and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and we'll keep you up to date. Well, with that, Darius, we got off straight into the first topic today, which is the St. Louis Blues continue being the most dominant team in the NHL. We did see last night the St. Louis Blues beating the Pittsburgh Penguins in overtime for their 11th consecutive win, tying their franchise record. I mean, what's your thoughts on it? I'm just going to kind of throw it to you here.
Yeah, like you said off the top, they're doing the unthinkable right now. I think everybody kind of wrote this team off at the start of the year, besides maybe St. Louis Blues fans. Maybe a portion of the fan base did as well. But 11 straight wins, and they're pretty comfortable in a playoff spot right now. It's looking like they're going to make the playoffs. And again, last night, big win for the 11th in a row. And finding ways to win. They win again in overtime, right? Just like the other night against the Detroit Red Wings, finding ways to win. They do it again. And Robert Thomas, no surprise to me, he's been a dog ever since his days in the Hamilton Bulldog system and winning, OHL championships there and going to Memorial Cup. So he's been absolutely unbelievable. One of my favorite players to watch. And, the fact that St. Louis has got him there and he's playing as well as he is a good piece. And he's been doing this ever since they won the Stanley Cup, really. So, he's continuing to do his thing. He's been fantastic. But yeah, this is super impressive what this team's been able to do. And it's not even the goal scoring, which again, they put up 5 goals on the board again. This is something we talked about, Mark, in our last video that, the last couple results, they've been putting up goals, but it's not just that. The most impressive thing to me is how many goals or how many, games they're not allowing them any goals, right? They're only allowing 1, 2 goals, something like that, right? And again, their record over the last 20 is absurd, absolutely unbelievable, right? The winning streak in itself is awesome, but their last 20 games, the record is unbelievable. So it's the goaltending, it's the defense, it's the commitment to team defense, which I think has been brought on by Jim Montgomery, who I think is one of the best coaches in the NHL. The Bruins were absolutely insane no matter how they were playing to let this guy go and fall into the lap of the St. Louis Blues because now they are going to make the playoffs. So it's been crazy to watch. Cam Fowler last night too. We were talking about him in our last video, the Hail Mary pass as well, tie the game. So really good stuff from the St. Louis Blues.
And listen, this is a team, like you said, currently in their last 20, 17, 2-1. You can pause and look through all the scores on this. Robert Thomas scoring the OT winner. This team has been on fire, and it's been a committee effort from a lot of players, but there's a lot of guys stepping up. Obviously, Robert Thomas has been dominant with this team, putting up 71 points in 65 games, looking like a franchise center for the St. Louis Blues. We know they have key players stepping up in Dylan Holloway, who we do have an update, which we will touch on shortly, as we know he was injured. But this is a team by committee that has been absolutely dominating. Looking at each line, you have a rookie on the top line right now. Braden Shen has been the heart and soul, the captain of this team. Every position, and this is without Colton Parayko in the lineup, who's debatably their top right-handed defenseman as well. This team has aspirations to win a Stanley Cup. After this run, they're looking like a team that can win a Stanley Cup. And listen, you're looking at this lineup, it's missing a key player. We do get an update from Jim Montgomery, and listen, we're not going to touch on this too long as it is a sad topic, but Dylan Holloway, lower body, will not be available for the next couple of games. Listen, Darius, obviously losing him is terrible. We're seeing a guy that's having a career year with the St. Louis Blues team, being top 5 in scoring. They're in such a good position right now, being the top in the wildcard spot, looking to maybe even steal a regular playoff spot. Does this kind of concern you, or is this Blues team so hot that you don't think it's going to matter too much with just how well they're playing?
It won't matter in the short term. And I think that's the good news of the injury update, right? That it's not going to be a long-term thing. He might miss a couple games, but he should be back for the playoff run. They're not going to miss him week to week or anything like that. So I think that's a good update in that way. But in the short term, honestly, yes, he's been a great player for them all year, right? Like almost 70 points on the season, breakout year for him, career year, all of that, playing in a new role as well on a new team. I mean, again, speaking of teams that are, not looking so good for letting go of guys, that's another guy in Dylan Holloway and the Edmonton Edmonton Oilers. But no, he's been fantastic. And I think that, heading into the playoffs, you're going to need him back. It looks like he will be back. And I think that's a good thing. Injuries are going to happen, but as long as it's not week to week or you're going to miss him long term, I think it's fine. And St. Louis Blues fans can breathe a little bit because he's been fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. Listen, Dylan Holloway coming back, he'll be fresh for the playoffs. But this is a team that we need to touch on the goaltend. We did a little bit in the last episode. If you haven't seen that yet, Jordan Binnington has been outstanding. Listen, we both said we were wrong when we seen him in the Four Nations as the starting goaltender. He has proved the entire league wrong, other than St. Louis fans that knew this. Jordan Binnington has been outstanding over the stretch. Yes, you have one or two games that don't look incredible, but this is someone that's putting up over 950 and 960 every night. What is your thoughts on Jordan Binnington? And are you starting to see kind of what we've seen out of him when he won a Stanley Cup and the Four Nations tournament?
I really like Jordan Binnington, right? As a goaltender. And, sometimes the theatrics of stuff when he's throwing punches and all that can get in the way of team success. And I understand that. But I like him as a goaltender. And yes, we said earlier at the Four Nations, was Canada smart for picking him? But this is a guy who comes up big in every big game that he's played in. He's obviously won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. And I think that Jordan Binnington has never, ever proved anybody right because the narrative has always been he can't do it. He's not that guy. So he's always proved everyone, the media, what have you, wrong. He's always been proving people wrong and showing his worth. So I think that's, a testament to who he is as a goaltender. He's been fantastic. He's continuing to come up big in these games. He's barely letting in any goals in the last little while. I mean, we talked about it in our last video ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins game. Yes, let in a few goals and obviously went to overtime and stuff like that. And the team, was looking like maybe they would drop that game. But the last little while, he was putting up like a consistent 960 save percentage, which is just absurd, right? Even for like a small sample size like that. So he's been putting up great numbers. If he continues to do that in the playoffs, I think that the reward that people talk about for finishing top in the conference or in your division, first spot in your division, it's not going to be a reward for whoever ends up facing them in the first round. Obviously, there's a lot to be juggled around still in terms of playoff positioning in the West and in the East. But whoever ends up playing the St. Louis Blues, that's not a reward at this point. They are hot.
And I mean, listen, it doesn't even stop with Binnington. We see Hofer as well. He's been outstanding last night, having just sub 900 save percentage. But other than that, he's been outstanding. This is a team that looks like a contender. Yes, going at the start of the year and being the hottest team in the NHL is nice, but St. Louis is picking up traction like we seen when they won a Stanley Cup. In the final weeks of the season, which continues into the playoffs, this is going to be a team, like you said, that no one wants to face. This is the hardest wildcard team that we've seen in quite some time that a team's going to have to take on. I don't think this is updated standings, but right now, the Vegas Golden Knights, do they want to face St. Louis? God, no, not a chance. But what are you guys' thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on the St. Louis run? I know we say it all the time. Who is your favorite player if you're a St. Louis fan? Who do you think the MVP on this team is? And do you think this is really showing the shades of another Stanley Cup run? Let us know down below. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, my co-host, Darius, and take care.